And then when the book came out, I kind of started to see things and think, yeah, that probably was what was going on. There's a couple of characters in the book where you look at it and you think to yourself, my God, Major Frank Hampson, he was a kind of a, I don't know how to describe it properly, but he was a kind of a ritualistic smoker, a pipe smoker. And Dad was one of those during the 70s. Kind of the irony of it all is that Dad became a pipe smoker because the kids actively encouraged him to do that. And we thought it would be cool to have a dad who smoked a pipe. But then, during the 80s, as we grew older, it became totally uncool for your dad to smoke a pipe. So it was, no, give that up. So Dad probably did give it up, and then he created a character in his mind, and you'd often see him sitting there kind of nearly like that. Not quite, but nearly. And you're thinking, Jesus, he's actually smoking in his mind again. And then you have obviously the main protagonist in the book, and I mean, he's the edgier of the characters there, you know, RAF pilot and somebody who lives for a bit of speed and stuff like that. And I'm sure that was Dad. I mean, I'll never forget, what age would I have been then? 32 or 33. Dad, you would have been maybe 70. And he retired, and Murray was delighted because he bought this motorcycle, and then he decided to buy a Ducati 996. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's a motorbike that goes at 70 miles an hour in first gear. So Dad bought one of these when he was in his 70s. So you kind of think to yourself, okay, so he's reliving that through another character in his book as well. So that's the kind of thoughts that crossed my mind as I read the book and stuff like that. So I'm delighted for Dad. So at this stage, now without further ado and without taking up the whole evening, I'd like to introduce Francis Martin. I want to get everything that I say correct here, so bear with me while I read my notes. He's a recently published author himself, and he has a book on the study of the Archbishop John Charles McQuaid, and the book is called Hold Firm, John Charles McQuaid and the Second Vatican Council. And I suppose the interesting thing about that is that occurred in 1962, so it coincides with the 50th anniversary of it. Okay? Just a little bit of background on Francis Xavier. He lectured in public relations and journalism at the DRT in Dublin for over 20 years, and he's a life fellow of the Public Relations Institute of Ireland. And in a lovely way, we were chatting earlier on, and I had some information and obviously a bit of research done. At 65 years of age, Francis Xavier received his PhD. So I've actually done him an injustice. He's actually Dr. Francis Xavier Carty. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Francis Xavier Carty and ask him to talk.
My students would have known if I don't have it written down, I'd be talking for the rest of the night. Therefore, now I won't be as fluent as Randall there was, because I have it written down, but it's not like in my cricket club in the Rainbow Union. You're really diverting already. In my cricket club in the Rainbow Union, the president of the Irish Cricket Union is coming along to the dinner every year and he makes a speech, and I was secretary at the time. I was president at the time, and this guy came along from the north, and he's all his very careful, a whole lot faster, and it's only 10 pages. And you won't get through those 10 pages. Skip. I said, the guys will be gone. They'll be in the bar before he gets to the end of the 10 pages. So it is one page, the typical Albert Reynolds type thing. And just like, to thank Sarah and you all for having me along to do this little duty here tonight, which I'm most delighted to do it, and to congratulate Marcus on the wonderful achievement of his first novel. It's a landmark for any person of any age to complete a novel, but to do so for the first time just after your 80th birthday is something which is even more special. Many of us have the desire to write that great novel. Everyone says they have a novel either in a drawer or in their mind, and they're going to write it someday, although they have the time to do it. But Marcus has done it. And some of us try, don't get anywhere, and a few of us succeed. Now, there was a friend of mine who, in the old days, when computers were a tourist attraction, where he took people around to see a suite of rooms where the computer was. Wow, look at all these, it can add up and all that sort of thing. And this guy wrote 10 books on computers. On his journey in from Deligiri to town every day, because he got the exact same train, and he'd do so many words each time on the journey out and the journey back. But finally, he got a publisher to accept his novel, and he went up with it, when he got the good word from the publisher, he got it in the sun, went up Killiney Hill, you know, up to the whole thing up there, obelisk, and he lay on a bench there, and he suddenly had to just elevate, because he created something. This was his creation, and nobody could take it from him. He created a world like Marcus Reed created the whole new worlds there, and there was so, and I say, and I quote from your press release, I say, Marcus, this friend, had created an array of characters, each of them as unique as the individual instruments of an orchestra. And it really is. There's a very, very good analogy to draw there. Now, I tried to write a novel years ago. It was on the point of being accepted by a very prestigious, London publisher, and he said so very politely in his letter, most polite letter, that it was worthy of publication. But the harsh economic times made it very difficult for a first-time author to break through. And of course, that book started with the hero drowning himself on page 1. And it went downstream all the way after that. I then thought I would strike gold, and I came up with this idea of a pope who was raped by 13 women in the desert. That also went downstream as the Pope resigned, was imprisoned by his successor, and soon died. And my problem was I just couldn't create characters. It was all just me talking as if every character was talking as if it was me. So this was a great thing of the creativity that Marcus has proved. And I know this is Marcus's first published novel, but he's done his apprenticeship over the years. It doesn't come overnight, and his success with his short stories and all his other work. And I'm sure there were days when you sat down and there was no thought coming. You just didn't know where the next word was going to come from. And it doesn't come automatically. It's not easy for anybody, not even for the best and the most famous, unless you believe Jeffrey Arthur, of course. It is hard work. It's lonely work, as Marcus knows. And it was a friend of my father's, and he said he could wallpaper his entire house with the rejection slips from publishers. But he kept going, and he ended up with 10 books to his name. And of course, Agatha Christie had a dozen publishers refused her before her first book was taken. And so this is a double success for Marcus and Mairead, because they recently celebrated the 50th wedding anniversary with the publication of Mairead's beautiful cookery book, Cuisine La Brique. So, and both of these books have been superbly produced by Portia under the leadership of Sarah and Elizabeth. Now, I hope I'm not leaving out the other members of the family there. But anyway, I certainly read it. Of course I read it. I'm a sucker for these books. I'm sure all of you will read it as well, if you haven't read it. Some of you have read it already. But it's my sort of book, and I look forward now to having it, reading it first, and having it alongside my shelf beside Freddie Forsyth, John le Carré, and Gerald Seymour, who will be my top 3. Gerald Seymour every year produces about 29 books now, and I always, the latest one is in Marbella in Spain. We'll have to go there after seeing all the jogging, all the crooks, all the gangsters are over there. So that's I think that's about all. Thank you, Sarah, again for inviting me to join you, and I hereby declare the Polish Week published. And unlike when they launch ships, I won't waste a good drink by smashing the bottle over a bar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I wanted to just pose a bit of symmetry here, just to acknowledge that Francis Xavier is actually a brother of somebody who's very well loved and respected in our own family, Jane Hardy. So I just wanted to mention that she can't be here this evening. Yes. So we're all thinking about she's off to Vienna, lucky her. So just wanted to acknowledge she obviously had a huge contribution to Irish music and was spoken about and attended the house and all about dinner parties and stuff like that. I remember seeing down to see what leftovers were there after the people left and whatever. But she's very well loved in the house, just to mention that. Next up, we wanted to Keith Byrne. He's an actor in Dublin, and he's going to actually do a reading from the book. Keith's his timing for entering into film, I actually find it a bit remarkable. They always say that about actors is all about timing, and his first film was the film Once, and he had a small role in that, but he was the cashier in Wilson's music store when the actually two main protagonists sang the song Falling Slowly. So sure, in hindsight, Keith has often talked to himself, but I was rising sharply at that point, so fair play. But it's actually an Oscar-winning film, so it's a nice thing to be able to say. And his latest project is a film called Pilgrim Hill, and it's a feature film, and he plays a supporting role as a guard, and it was actually selected for the Galway Film Festival. So with no further ado, Keith, you could do.
Brenton stuck his head outside into the Galway causeway. It was dimly lit and deserted. He lifted a holdall and, trailing the connecting wire, made his way around to a point where he had a good view of the stage and VIP box. Killer's music surged up from below. Brenton placed a holdall against a waist-high wall, separating the gallery from the balcony underneath. He extracted his own two-way and was prepared to speak to Williams and Pringle on stage. When the quiet section arrived, he pressed the speak button and said, "If you're receiving me, one of you stand." Brenton raised binoculars and saw Williams give Pringle the nod. Corporal Pringle stood. Time was in short supply, but at least this was one less thing to worry about. He lifted out Jim Sherry's two-way radio from the hold-all. The extra wires bulged from its side. The instrument was now held together by tape. The connecting wire stretched back along the gallery and into the control room to what he had hoped was a piercing volume of tone. By inserting himself in the same wavelength as Lutovich, he could hope to get through to the trigger man and identify him, and he hoped against hope also neutralize him. Sherry's amplifier would deliver a deafening blast to trigger man's earpiece and incapacitate him. He found his hands were shaking, so he knelt down and placed the binoculars on the gallery wall to steady his view. He concentrated on the woodwind and percussion sections of the orchestra, and his heart pounding pressed with the transmission button. The response from within the woodwind was immediate and frantic. Reparsky dropped his bassoon and grabbed his head in agony. In the binoculars, his convulsed features dramatically underlined the volume he had taken. "Bingo!" Brenton exhaled. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and then lowered the binoculars. He must inform the bandsman on his own two-way. There was a movement behind him. He had expected Jim Sherry, who was shaken to find Lutovich standing there. The Pole had installed himself further along the gallery, behind a pillar, and had been speaking to Reparsky when his compatriot's agonized reaction alerted him to possible extraneous interference. He looked over to see Brenton using a two-way. Lutovich's suspicions clearly showed on his face. "What are you doing here?" he demanded in halting English. Brenton faced Lutovich and said, "I could well ask the same of you, and perhaps with more reason." "I am Polish security," Lutovich stated flatly. Brenton felt Lutovich was playing for time. If nothing else intervened, then what the SB man had planned would take place. But before Brenton could achieve extrication from the verbal dance, Lutovich withdrew a small pistol from inside his pocket and placed it on to Brenton's temple. "Tell me," he said, with the assured menace of one who held the upper hand, "why you do this?" He indicated towards the binoculars, and two-way Brenton tried to calculate how much of the killer remained. With the cold tip of the gun barrel against his head, every note in the score dissolved in a jumble. Note by note, that fateful last bar was inching closer and closer, pulling him towards an abyss. "Why don't we call the hall security?" Brenton suggested. Lutovich grunted dismissively. "I am security," he said, tapping the pistol against Brenton's head. "Tell me what you are doing before I hurt you." The control room door opened. Lutovich glanced behind, but Brenton's hand shot out and cracked into the SB man's larynx, karate style. The pistol shot around, and Lutovich fell back, gasping and coughing towards the open door. Jim Sherry stood in the doorway, not sure whether to come forward or take cover. "Call security!" Brenton shouted, and moved in the opposite direction towards a door in the cell in the gallery wall. He staggered out through it, and then a second door onto an encircling roof. A soft drizzle of rain enveloped him. He searched for a hiding place without success and wondered how the rain had managed to soak his person so rapidly. He held up his dripping hand close to his face in a dim light. It was covered in blood. He could not believe what he was seeing. He felt no pain. There had been no feeling of impact, no indication of any sort. He tried to source the blood, but heard the first door to the hall opening behind him. He would be seen immediately at the back of any one of the skylights. He slipped behind the door that opened out onto the roof. He had hardly done so when he felt Lutovich's presence on the other side. He tried to control his breathing. The strain imbued the distant music with menace, and his heart beat a syncopated accompaniment to the insistent rhythm. Before his staring eyes, Lutovich's pistol edged out between the door and the door frame. Brenton's breathing stopped. Then, with a sudden exhalation, he slammed the door on the pistol barrel and held the pressure on the door. Nothing happened for a couple of seconds. Then, centimetre by centimetre, the noise of the barrel began to jerk back inside. Brenton exerted further pressure, but the gun continued to jerk and jolted its way back inside the door. In desperation, he grabbed the barrel. A round shot between his fingers into the Kensington night. The pistol vanished and the door snapped shut. Brenton put his back to the door and braced his feet against the ground. The door handle rattled at his back. Then the door itself began to bump threateningly. Brenton wrested the two-way from his jacket. "It's Reparsky," he shouted into the transmitter. "Reparsky," he repeated. "On bassoon." Lutovich blasted a hole in the door between Brenton's shoulder and his head. Brenton pitched sideways. As he picked himself up from the ground, Lutovich emerged onto the roof. They eyed one another silently. Lutovich smiled appreciatively. "I could kill you now," he said. He waved the pistol towards the parapet wall. "But I have a better plan." He positioned himself between the exit door and Brenton's position at the parapet wall. "Move," he shouted. "I give you chance." Contempt etched itself in the SB man's face. "I shoot, or you jump."
Say a few words.
Years of age suggests I put on my glasses. It also affects my memory, so I'm reading. I would like to say a few brief words to thank all of you for taking the time to come along this evening. I know it is hard to come out on a dark autumn evening, so I want you to partake in the food and drinks here, enjoyment. A special thanks to Francis Xavier Carty, who launched this occasion. He comes from a very distinguished family of writers and musicians, and it is a great privilege that an author and academic of his distinction would undertake this. I also like to thank Keith for the reading. His resonance and poise, which only an actor could achieve. I hope your acting career continues to be productive and bring you great satisfaction. Thanks also to Portia Publishing and indeed all the children for your belief in the novel and the many discussions we all had on its characters, which at times were cogent and thought-provoking, and at other times became as surreal as fictional characters become extended family members. Last but not least, I want to thank Corinne, a woman who firmly believes in the word of encouragement. Which reminds me, when the MC, Mr. Randall, was born, I rang Corinne's mother and told her what the good news and what had happened, and we were all very joyful and cheerful along the way. But your mother, Eileen O'Reilly's first comment was, "Isn't she the little brick?" So I finished, Mairead, by congratulating or convincing that comment by saying, "You're looking at you, Brick."
Okay, just as a formal wrap up, first of all, well done to Dad, because I know that it's difficult. Second of all, he was very generous because he included me in the character analysis, which is I wasn't asked anything about any of it at all. Not even like to understand the names around them. So thank you for that. Anyway, look, listen, I want everybody to enjoy themselves. There's a couple of things that I would like to say, and this is kind of outside of what we're actually here for. I don't know if people have noticed that there's been a lot more of guaranteed Irish and stuff like that at the moment with the economy being the way it is. So obviously we're hoping that people will buy a copy of that book. We would also hope that people will have a look and see and search out Francis Xavier's book and review that. But also, Deirdre and John have been incredibly good hosts, and I think it's an onus on us for those who have been here, if we're in the local area, that we drop in, even if it's for a coffee or for a bite to eat or whatever else. It's a wonderful venue, and I hope that people will come back. So on that note, people go have a glass of wine and enjoy themselves, and congratulations to that.
Elizabeth, I'm delighted that she got the chance to say this few words. It's been a lovely occasion. Everyone, most members, would you like to wait?
Oh yeah, we were to Marcus after, but I just wanted to sort this.
I mean, I'll give you a change. Hang on. 2 more, so that's 30.
Tomorrow I might have I need 1 or 2 books at a time. That'll be great. And I wouldn't need to This is for Elizabeth. For Elizabeth. Yeah. You're here in spirit, Elizabeth.
No, I didn't go down there, but I went to Mauritius. Yeah.
Rhubarb.
Rhubarb.
My sister and Luke conditioned. And I met Sarah.
And the sound would be. Okay, this is the crazy one.
He told me to say rhubarb.
Great go. And somebody says to me,
That's what I was doing in the first place. And they're too far away.
I have three here. And the first one is for Irish. And Irish was sign the book with love from us. Whatever you want to say, if you want to say with love from us. So that's for Irish.
And I love that. And I hope it's like me. He refuses. I got that for Christmas about 5 years. I was brought in. Nobody knows my number. I can't even remember. Sorry, I'm trying to kill.
You can say whatever you like, but she just wanted to make sure that
Is that okay?
whatever you like as
Did you put our posts?
Two of us. One for Steve, STV, is on maker.
Hello, Elizabeth. Guess who loved you?
Fortunately, couldn't make it, Liz. Well, either could I. As you can see, I'm in New York and having a great time, but we both would be there if we could be. It was a great evening, and sorry you couldn't be here, but as you can hear, I'm sure everybody had a great time, and it was a great success, and Dad is a big smile on his face. See you later.
So, natural. waiting for the next installment of Michael and his adventures through Europe. We've got your jazz novel that I've finished reading, so very good to finish reading yours, darling.
I didn't know this was a video. Where's these posing like take the picture? You're smiling. Are you pretending to be a statue?
Susan was talking to herself, you know.
Yeah, I have this conversation with
Susan
I am really interesting to me.
So this is for Elizabeth, yeah.
Who else did you play? And I enjoyed.
So a comment for Elizabeth.
And I have a plan. Oh, sorry, this is still on me. The Irish Film Authority, right now, apparently, have been financing lots of Irish films in Eastern Europe for some unknown reason I can't figure out, but I have watched everything that's illuminated, and I know Mark Garrett did the art direction, who used to go out with Julie, Deirdre's friend, blah blah blah, and he's friends with John. Anyway, so maybe Poland film this book could be a very good film. I think I would watch it. Keep the camera away from me. But that is, apparently that is. They
Any
have
other
been
comments?
financed soon.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Just remember, I get 50% of everything.
Sell the movie! What's the other way like Tinker Tailor
Okay.
Spy? I love it. Oh, I'm done. And it really reminds me of